Strixhaven has been released for 2 weeks, and so naturally it's high time for some brand new spoilers. Adventures in the Forgotten Realms and Modern Horizons 2 have had cards revealed, and both sets are pushing the envelope in different ways. So, with so much to talk about for when they actually release, we are going to offer a few initial thoughts and predictions. Welcome to Magic the Flavouring, the Magic the Gathering podcast, where we talk about all things Magic, flavour design and lore. I am your host, Andy Mann.
Hello, this is Nathan Cancel.
And we are once again buying our ticket and getting it punched for the inevitable hype train that has just rolled into the Magic Station.
Yeah, it's not one but two. Strixhaven's barely out whatsoever, and we've got 2 sets that are being spoiled again.
And
Great,
I feel like I made that joke not 4 or 5 episodes ago.
Literally, not even that long ago. I know, it's ridiculous.
Oh my gosh! Literally, Strixhaven's been out for 2-3 weeks. And they're already giving us the next 2 sets along. Wizards.
But it's interesting. There are some interesting things going on. So they are distracting us with the razzle-dazzle, as it were.
Yeah. They're giving us the old flim-flam flummox. So if you hadn't heard, if you've been avoiding any kind of endless social media or spoilers or whatever, firstly, good on you. Secondly, we have Modern Horizons 2. There's been a few cards spoiled from that, or previewed, I should say. And also the D&D set, Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, which there's already 2 hashtags going on of MTG D&D, MTG AFR. And I don't think anyone's going to agree what they're going to call this set. It's the D&D set, but the set is called Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. Mm-hmm. So whatever, fine. They should have just called it D&D, to be honest with you. And we've got some cards from that as well. And yeah, I guess before we do our inevitable set breakdowns and when everything gets released or whatever else, it is kind of nice. And I know you especially liked doing this, Nathan, where we just kind of look at it, we see if any of our little previous thoughts and feelings from the past year of leading up to this set have been correct from the little that we've seen, and we'll make some future predictions and future little sort of deep dives on what we think may or may not happen, which is kind of cool because I was editing the episode we did with Kristen Gregory, where we interviewed her about the different Ravnican guilds. And this was just at around the time that Strixhaven was about a week away, I think it was. And I've been editing that podcast for our YouTube channel because we upload our interviews onto YouTube, albeit about a month after they come out on the podcast. And it was very interesting listening to that, hearing the kind of things that we were excited about and predicting for Strixhaven, either coming true or not coming true, or coming true but maybe not being as cool as we thought it was going to be. I know we were quite excited about what the insult magic was going to look like for the Silver Quill, and actually it turned into, they did have insult magic, it also was bullying. So there was definitely stuff where, maybe we were excited, and then it's that's not quite what we wanted. So this will be the same, I'm very, very sure. We're not going to talk that much about Modern Horizons. I think there is some cool stuff. We'll do a little bit at the end. We are going to be mostly focusing on Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. What's your experience with D&D, Nath?
So this is the interesting thing, right? Someone in our local game store group chat kind of poked us going how are you kind of prepare for how do you prefer to talk about and engage with these sets as they happen? The idea of using other IPs, right? Because D&D is kind of the first little foray before we look into things like Lord of the Rings or Warhammer, right? And the first thing I said was research. Reasonably, there's very few things that I know as much about other than Magic and Pokemon. I'm sure. Down the rabbit hole so far at this point. I'm never coming out again. But there are I don't have that same kind of tenacity with other IPs. I have played a bit of D&D. I don't know the ins and outs completely. I can read the theme quite well, but maybe the specific names or something are something I have to go and have a look at. Immersing myself into the social media side or the forums and that kind of thing is really good for this, because there's a lot of really invested D&D players out there that are responding to this quite they're engaging a lot. There's a lot of discussion about some of these things, which is it's really fun to get into. Otherwise, I'm not an enthusiast, but I've dabbled.
I'm in a very, very, very similar boat, in fact. And it's kind of weird that you and I bond over Magic the Gathering, obviously, but we've known each other for 10 years, and we've only just recently started bonding over our love of Pokemon. I've been playing Pokemon since Pokemon Blue got released in 1997, the Christmas of 1997. I've played every single game at least twice, and I've engaged with things like the TV show and the card game, obviously. So it's kind of weird that we both have that shared IP as well that we never really talk about unless we're kind of making a joke on this podcast. I'm also a huge fan of Lord of the Rings. I used to be a lot more into Star Wars than I am now, but I'm a big Star Wars fan. And D&D, I've come to D&D quite a lot recently. I'm actually part of 2 separate campaigns at the moment, weirdly enough, that have only just happened in the past year. Because of lockdown and COVID, I guess, there have been a lot of my friends that have wanted to start DMing and have seen this as the perfect opportunity to sit down with a fucking, like source book and actually learn it and learn what to do. And then we'll do like Zoom D&D sessions, or when lockdown restrictions kind of changed and flipped around, we do like socially distanced ones in person and all this kind of thing. So yeah, I've got 2 different tiefling characters. One's a warlock and one's a wizard, that I'm kind of playing through. And we've played in a campaign with a friend of ours who, again, very similar, wanted to learn how to DM. This was years ago. We played in a couple of sessions together, and I played in a half-orc soldier. So it's kind of cool that I have actually seen a few different sides of this game. And yeah, I mean, it's a Wizards of the Coast property, right? It wasn't always a Wizards of the Coast property, but it hits a lot of the same flavor beats. But there is a difference, and you can see it on these cards that got spoiled, right?
Yes, absolutely. The theme, what's really interesting is that it's, and one of the things I really want to delve into here is that this is a really great case study. Like all the cards that we have here, or like at least a few of them, have really great case studies for how the 2 different games communicate the world mechanics. Because there are some significant differences between them, but obviously because it's the same parent company, there is almost like, it feels like the worlds are handled with the same kind of care and attention and detail, right? And it feels like there should be a lot of things that translate directly over, but the idiosyncrasies are going to kind of be interesting. And this is where a lot of the discussions happened with the flavor of a couple of these cards, is like whether or not whether they're layering magic over the D&D or the D&D over the magic. We asked this question ages ago when we first heard about it. It was like, oh, where's the middle ground going to be? Is it going to be a combination of both? Is it going to be one informing the other, or the other one having more of a prevalence? And as we talk about these cards, we'll kind of see a few of the deviances and where they've gone with things, and what that means kind of for the rest of the set, and or whether or not I maybe missed the flavour of the card, that kind of thing. As I say, people are quite impassioned about D&D, so that the idiosyncrasies are something that people don't just know, but they make up themselves and they obsess over and they will fight over. Some characters will demand that they know exactly what their character's doing better than the DM ever could, whereas the DM will state that they know the world better than, that kind of impassioned critical understanding of the mechanics is maybe something that's going to be interesting, because they can hit so many flavour notes really, really well, but maybe the average player won't, like average Magic player, for example, who doesn't know D&D that well, they'll just go straight over the head and maybe it'll miss the mark. So it'll be interesting to see where it falls.
Yeah, it's a weird one, right? Because so in my limited experience of Dungeons and Dragons, obviously I'm dealing with DMs who they're playing through source books, and generally it's been 5e as well, 5th edition, which is the current edition of D&D at time of recording. My understanding of it is that you have that framework of the world, and you have your source books with all your different sort of creature types, if you like, and all your different monsters and stats and everything that you can do, and all your classes and etc. 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 But the thing that always surprised me is that there are actually like set characters who are like the legendary creatures, if you like, of Dungeons and Dragons that exist in the world, and they exist outside of the self-contained source books. So you can get like individual source books that are like beginning to end adventures, and like you go to like Castle Ravenloft, which is the kind of spooky. I'm going to say Innistrad. I'm so sorry. Any D&D listeners,
it does feel like
yeah. Like it's the Innistrad analog. We're going to be talking at this through like a magic lens, and you have your like Lord of the Castle there, who's a character, but you do have like characters like Xanathar and Tiamat and all these different like big legendary creature characters that are names, and I think having that, and we'll see as we talk through some of these cards, there's a couple of them that have already appeared on like the key art or in card form that I think is going to bridge the gap quite well, because it won't just be some like abstract idea of like what a kobold is in terms of Dungeons and Dragons. Like it will just feel like just a legendary creature that also happens to be really relevant to D&D players. And so I think they're going to do quite well. I'm surprised at how normal these cards look. They don't look like they're out of place.
No, again, like the worlds do have such a similarity. It's like how I would imagine Lord of the Rings is going to port really comfortably, and I think it's very obvious that certain IPs synergize with the format of the game, and the way of what we expect. So yeah, saying that it does. There is a certain quality, almost like deliberately to them, like the way that the card's named, like the formatting of the name, or like say like the creature type or something like that. That seems to deliberately distinguish it as being something slightly different, right? And it does seem to deliberately try and lift it out of just going, oh, this could have just been a normal Magic card. It could have just been in any set, but it happens to be in the D&D set. Like these, I think every card they're going to deliberately try and make it feel like it's specifically a slight analog from Magic, like of what Magic could look like. I think it's to kind of soften us into the same resets that you'll get for other IPs potentially in the future. Again, this is a really easy one. Like I feel like D&D and obviously Magic have the same parent company. It's so the layer on it's not very different, right? It's not very far from each other.
Something that should be worth noting as well, and we'll talk about this in much more depth probably during our Flavour Picks episodes way down the line when this ad's actually probably released. I'm currently looking on these cards on magicspoiler.com. There's a few different websites that have these kind of as a card gallery, so if you're listening, you can kind of look them up now. But D&D has like a lot of the same artists and a lot of the same art directors who work on that game as well. Some of them have recently kind of been big in the game. Like I know, for example, I'm going to get the name of the book wrong. Tashana's Cauldron of Everything. I don't know if it's Tashana. It's the latest source book for D&D at time of recording. Magali Villeneuve did the cover for that, for example. So like there are big names that we know work on both these IPs, but I think the point of having art directors on these games, even if they also are art directors for Magic sometimes, is that they do understand the subtle differences in the look of the game. Like so D&D's been going since the 70s, and a lot of that aesthetic, especially for like 70s and 80s fantasy, has carried on through and are just like modern versions of it, whereas Magic the Gathering seems to have had kind of a revamp of its look and an evolution over time. The D&D stuff is more like saying, no, we want this kind of very illustrative style, and we want our creatures to look the same across the board, but we just want obviously the art techniques to be kind of updated. So a good example are the Beholders, who we've got a couple of cards for them, and the character Xanatha, who's a big D&D character, is a Beholder as well. They look the same as they've always done. They're the same creature. Whereas if you go to Magic, for example, the goblins change from plane to plane to plane, so they can change up how a goblin looks, and they can move away from certain tropes and this, that, and the other. D&D doesn't really do that in the same way. So it's kind of cool seeing this art style and this visual style that I think, will look distinct. And especially with creature types that are unique to D&D, that we don't necessarily have in Magic, but will appear on these cards, I think there'll be a bit of a shake-up as well. But you've got a bit of a breakdown on things you want to talk about. So
I do, yeah. I will quickly just say I wasn't going to mention it, but we have seen the showcase artwork, and it's the old style as in like in the source books of where you have the character sheets, right, where it's kind of got that tea stained almost parchment,
like
look.
Sepia tone,
exactly, and it's very hard line black and white graphic imaging, which is really nice, and that's obviously directly pulls from the source book. It's sourced from the source. Fantastic. Again, that will give that iconic feeling to the showcase cards, which is quite nice. So the first one I want to talk about, we've basically seen, I think we've seen one cycle, and then we've got 5 other cards to talk about. The first one being probably the most innocuous out of all of them, and that's a Prosperous Innkeeper. 1 and a green for a 1/1 halfling citizen. When Prosperous Innkeeper enters the battlefield, create a treasure token. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. First and foremost, yay, another Soul Sister effect. Great.
I mean, it's in green, right?
Isn't this literally just a white card, though?
Sure. Isn't there Soul... What is it? Soul...
Soul Warden
Soul
is
Warden,
the planar, the planar chaos, the plane shifted version of Soul Sisters.
This one makes a treasure as well, and it costs 2 mana.
It does also make a treasure, and it does cost 2 mana. So there are differences. It is funny that there's been mentioned, obviously, that it just does all of the white effects, but is now in green. But I don't know. I quite like the idea of Innkeeper. Obviously, the Innkeeper for Eldraine, as much as it was a horrible card in the format of Standard, it was also a green card. I like this idea of homeliness being taken care of by green creatures. Annoyingly, and this is my first point with this, is a missed opportunity, is where's the flavor text? Like this feels like the kind of card that, right, so every adventure, so the flavor text I'd like to add to it is something like every good adventure starts with food in your belly, or something like that, because realistically all of your adventures in D&D will usually start in an inn or some kind of setting like that. It feels like the initiation of your company's adventure, or it's where you go to after your adventure, to have your rest between your grand quests or whatever. So the fact it doesn't have that almost like welcoming kind of like just come on in friends, you look tired, why not take a rest kind of flavor. I mean the artwork by Eric Deschamps encapsulates this perfectly, but the fact it doesn't have it kind of listed on there is a bit annoying. The fact they had to obviously put the reminder text for the treasure token was probably the nail in the coffin for the flavor text, which is unfortunate. But I mean, again, that's just a slight gripe. The interesting thing is the creature typing.
Yes,
halfling citizen.
Yes.
Now, both of those are points of conversation. the biggest debate I've seen about this is, are Kithkin now likely to be errated into halflings?
Right, so this was a bigger question, isn't it? This is a conversation we've had ever since we heard Forgotten Realms was going to be a thing. Because
creature debate. Yeah.
The whole creature debate about, like, so for example, tieflings is a good example. Tiefling are the sort of demonic humanoid race in Dungeons and Dragons. We have Azras, I guess, in Magic the Gathering. And my question was, are Azras going to be in D&D and they're going to be the tiefling analog, or were they going to do tiefling and they were just going to use like a complete new thing, or use cards that say all tieflings and Azras, or, you know, there's a whole different combination of stuff. This gives us our first little look that they are doing D&D creature types.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, to answer your question, are Kithkin going to be errated? I don't think so. Looking at these cards, I think they're going all in for D&D. I don't think they're going to cross over.
And then this other question go forwards then is, what about when we get to hobbits? Are they going to be hobbits, halflings, or Kithkin? You know,
in the Lord of the Rings universe, hobbits are at least called halflings by other people. So I think
seems like
maybe
it would work, right?
That might work.
Yeah, and I guess keeping both of the halfling as a separate thing for both, like, separate IP formats, right? It kind of lifts it again a little bit outside of the normal multiverse. So I guess it works. I mean, it's one of these things like paladins, right? Like, because we've had plenty of paladins in Magic, like in card names, but they always come down to being knights, you know, or soldiers or clerics or whatever. So that was the other one that I had, other than, you know, tieflings. So maybe they do just do tieflings, avoid the whole devil thing. Clearly, devils are in the set. We'll find out. We'll talk about that in just a second. So if it's interesting to see if they'll have tieflings and devils both in the set together and kind of show the differences between them.
I think so, but at least, well, I mean, I don't know. Well, first, I mean, to kind of roll back all this conversation, this is probably just going to be one set, isn't it? This is just going to be a one set block.
Yeah.
So how much, if this is, it depends how much they want to do. If they want to create a set that really just shows off all of D&D to Magic players, they might do like 1 or 2 cards for every single like franchise race, like, you know, kind of face race of the D&D. Or if they want to make it like a bit more coherent, and they think maybe they'll be going back to the Forgotten Realms, or maybe, as a lot of people have been asking on Twitter and things like that, Dragonlance, which is like the other Dungeons and Dragons universe, if you like, because they like it's not all just on in the Forgotten Realms. Then they may elect to like not do certain ones and then bring them back, like Gargantuans, for example. Gargantuan is a D&D creature type that's just a giant. Essentially, it's like a giant humanoid, but they're more sentient than giants who are like the giants from Skyrim, for example.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it's tricky. I don't know.
Yeah. So again, the first look, we've got a new creature typing. So maybe the idea if they'll lean into it and create a separation. I mean, the only thing it interrupts, right, is creature synergies, and that's maybe superfluous. Flavor over function might be more important in a set like this.
I think in a larger sense, and I've been thinking this since they've started introducing this idea of having Magic class types across the different colors be different specific to their color. So you've noticed a lot more black warlocks, blue wizards, red shamans, etc., etc. I think we're going to see a shake up in how they approach design for creature types. I think we're going to get a lot more niche, but we're also going to get a lot more powerful effects for niche tribes. I think that's where we're going to go.
Yeah. So then going from your creature type to your class, citizen as a class. So now, along with peasant and noble, we're further expanding what I'm going to call basic classes, you know, in the air quotes, like the things that aren't, so you don't have a job necessarily, right? You're not like a soldier or a wizard. It's just who you are, right? Yeah. And so, because there's been a discussion about whether or not it seems weird when you just have like a human without any class to them. Like, it doesn't really, it's a missed opportunity, right? Unless there's not enough space on there.
I know a few humans that don't have any class, so...
Well, this is the thing, right? Because do you have to then categorize everyone who doesn't have a class into either being a peasant, a noble, a citizen, all of that nonsense? I mean, should all humanoid creatures at least have a job or a class, because that's how society works? You know, not every beast needs to be like a beast citizen. Like, obviously, that's. I
suppose it's kind of like how you're viewed by the sort of larger everyone else. Like, so a halfling citizen, he's a citizen because he's doing like a civil service job. He's doing like a job in and amongst a society of which he's a citizen in. He's an innkeeper, like a shopkeeper would be a citizen. But if you're like an assassin, you're neither a noble, a citizen, or a peasant.
Well,
or
your
whatever.
job takes precedence, right? And if you don't
I
have a
guess.
job, I guess being noble or a peasant, you're less likely to have a functional job either because you've got enough money not to need one, or you're not like important enough to have one. Like it's just kind of interesting to think that maybe we'll come to a point where, unless there isn't space where it makes sense, like God or Avatar or something like that, that every humanoid will have at least some aspect of class to them. But yeah, the only time this has ever been seen is and the R&D, one of the R&D cards, which is I think like 4 kids in a trench coat or something like that, is a citizen, and then there's a bunch of token makers to make citizens, like Sarapidian Empires Volume 7 or whatever it is, makes 1/1 citizens.
I think it's fine. We have like cowards in Magic. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I like it. I think it's great. I think we need this diversity. I think again, it's an added bit of flavor that doesn't take up anything extra, right? It's just extra design space, extra synergy potentially in the future, and it also gives a bit more of a background of the character. So I think it's nice. It's just interesting that we got both a class and a new class type and creature typing all in one. So the next thing is, I think, this is something I was really, really happy about, and then I got really angry about. And this is the basic lands. We've got a basic land cycle. And the really interesting thing about these basic lands, Andy, is that we've got basic lands with flavor text.
Flavor text on basic lands. We got there. We got there.
Do you know why I got really angry as soon as I thought? Because the more I think about it, the more I'm like, why haven't they been doing this already?
Well, I'll tell you why. There's a very tangible example. There was a blog post from Mark Rosewater. I think it could be 2016. I'm also not going to put it in the description box, so, treat me like Wikipedia on this one, but I have physically seen it. Although Wikipedia does have sources, so whatever. I'm even worse than Wikipedia. He, on his blogger said that they wouldn't put flavor text on basic lands because they wanted to preserve the visual sort of aesthetic of basic lands. So, because it does look sort of strange, because the flavor text on these basic lands are centered in the text box, which is kind of odd because you only really see it on the vanilla creatures.
But that kind of...
It's also got the mana symbol behind it. Do you know what I mean?
And it's smaller, right? The mana symbol's smaller, right? It's not it doesn't feel like it's the same size. I don't know, maybe it's my the aspect ratio I've got the picture at, but it does look like the symbol's slightly smaller than it would be otherwise. I think the fact they censor it kind of differentiates it from rules text anyway. But also the way I've looked at it was like it's free real estate. You had the opportunity, and the thing that really gets me is it's literal world building on your world building. Like the lands are the things you build your battlefield out of, and how you cast your spells. And you could have put the world building of your set onto the bits of the world. Like, and that's, I guess it's one of the things of when you don't necessarily get the greatest opportunity to do big lots of flavor text because they don't make as many vanilla creatures anymore, and that's the only time you get such chunky flavor text. Like this is for me, feels like the ultimate opportunity, and it's weird that it's taken so long for them to do it. I think it's also a really interesting parallel, considering that they've just released the really pedantic secret lair. Because we haven't talked about any of the secret lairs. I wondered
if you were going to mention this. Yeah,
absolutely.
They've had the full all-text basic lands, which is the official rules of Magic the Gathering rulebook text for what a basic land is and what it does on the full length of the card for each one of them. Yeah.
And
I love those.
Right, it's a $250 like pedantic troll, or it's almost like a troll product, but I really like it. I think it's the novelty of it's really interesting. And it's just really interesting that they did that in the same breath as then also releasing the first flavor text. And it's like, notice how much space you have that you could fill with things. That yes, you want the artwork. And these artworks, by the way, by Adam Paquette, are stunning. They are so good. It's one of the best planes I've seen in a long time.
Adam
I can imagine
Paquette
people...
is a fucking boss. Like,
right?
Such a good
artist.
Is
treasure. And maybe we'll get other cycles in the set. If they do, these will be some of the most sought after lands, I think, because again, it's got a little bit of story on it. It fits. They all look really interesting. They're not they're not bland in any way, shape, or form. So I can see people looking to get like 30 of this plane. Right.
Also, the flavor text itself. There's a lot of meta going on here in terms of like the people. So the people who've made this Magic the Gathering set, I would put hard money down saying that almost anyone who works at Wizards of the Coast R&D for Magic the Gathering probably plays D&D to quite an extent as well, and vice versa. Right? I just don't. I don't see how you can't. So there's obviously a lot of love that's been put into this, right? And the ideas that are floating around, even if the writers don't necessarily play D&D or even play Magic, they probably have people kind of in the sort of design element going, this is what we want. So the flavor texts, they're not flavor texts from the point of view of the game.
No,
they're flavor texts from the point of view of the player, because they're like the DM in a game of Dungeons and Dragons telling you what's going on. So for example, the planes, the flavor text reads, venturing beneath the desert sands, you've discovered an alien power pulsing with conceivable energy. you've discovered an alien power. It's the DM describing to you the game that's going on, and it's the same for all of them. So we're outside looking in. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, the way I said it was that it resonates evocative. You play the land and your adventure continues. Literally, as you play it, the adventure, you're going into the planes and you have an explanation as you go into it. It's so good. It's
it'd be
so
like
well
if
done.
it'd be like if we got an island and just a magic set that say you play an island and tap it for 1 mana and play Brainstorm, you whiff, or like something stupid like that,
right? And again, I mean, again, maybe these are specific, right? Like they're very specific to the point of where they're kind of direct references. Like apparently the island's flavor text is direct reference to the Storm King's Thunder. This one's direct from the Sunless Citadel. So these are also not only just cultivated to sound like they're from D&D, but they actually reference things from within D&D itself, which is a great double box tick. For those that aren't privy to D&D lore, this is still an interesting, engaging way to do the flavor text. For those that know the game a little bit and know the formatting, they're like, oh, great, this is like the DM speaking. And if those that really know the game, they're like, oh, this is specifically talking about that. I remember taking adventure in that place. Like it hits on all 3 levels. And again, I don't know. It's almost like the cat's out of the bag now, right? Like if they don't continue doing this, and again, like the whole full art land of why don't they just keep doing full art lands? Oh, because it's not special anymore. And I'm like, yeah, but who needs the mana symbol? Who cares about?
Do you know what? If they were to keep doing flavor texts on lands, I would almost want it just to be like trivia about the typography of a plane. So like if we got like a bunch of Zendikar basic lands, they would have like quotes or like trekking tips for the cliffs of Kazul or whatever else. I'd want it to be in world. I wouldn't necessarily want it to be kind of a wink to the kind of player base like these ones are. But I would almost want them to be like geography specific flavor texts. Yeah. I'm also fine with them I personally am fine with them not putting flavor texts on lands. I can see what they're talking about. But if they are going to do it on things like the kind of, comes in tapped dual lands that give you a life or whatever, and they've got a little text box there, maybe they could afford to put on basic lands as well. I don't know.
Yeah. Again, I just feel like it's free real estate, right? That's why more is more. I can understand. Again, I can understand the cross point against that, but I mean, yeah, I like them a lot. And again, I don't think the specific framing of the way they do this is so evocative of D&D that I don't think that it would translate well into other sets. So I agree with that. Looking at the next one, this is a power word kill. Yes. And this is probably one of the best case studies for how the 2 games are going to communicate their world mechanics, right? Because in D&D 5th edition, Power Word Kill is a powerful spell that kills anything with 100 hit points or less. There's no saving throw made, and it doesn't obviously affect like bigger creatures, which is where maybe. So obviously, in the word Power Word Kill for the card in Magic is 1 and a black for an instant destroy target non-angel, non-demon, non-devil, non-dragon creature. Interestingly, it specifies devils because, and this is one of the bits that's interesting with Magic and D&D, is that devils and demons are kind of flipped in the 2 different IPs. Like in MTG, devils are like the chaotically meddlesome kind of creatures, and demons like the contractorial, like requiring subservience dudes, right? Whereas in D&D, the devils are the more cruel, manipulative, calculating ones, lustful for more power, whereas the demons are more creatures of mayhem and chaos and destruction that don't care about planning or cunning. So the tropes are kind of flipped. So it'll be interesting to see when we get demons and devils and potentially tieflings from the adventures in Forgotten Realms, like what they're going to do and how they're going to represent them, whether they're going to feel like magic, normal typical magic representations, or if they're going to flip the trope and keep it true to what they do in D&D. Like I'm not entirely sure. There was discussion of maybe whether it should have been toughness based, because obviously the spell talks about whether or not they've got a certain amount of hit points. Obviously the bigger creatures in Magic are like angels, demons, dragons, but obviously devil doesn't then work for that. So
sure,
maybe...
I mean, I quite like it. I think the point you're getting at is that it's evocative of what the spell does while still functioning in a mechanical sense. And this is what we wanted, right? And I think it was almost a given. I don't think this was like the guys from Magic the Flavouring fucking called it from a year ago. Like they were always going to do spells that were spells and cantrips in D&D. And we've already had a bunch of them. Like there are a bunch of names like, Fireball or Lightning Bolt or whatever else. These are also all D&D spells. But now we're going to get like Power Word Kill. The next one I want to see Magic Missile. I want to see Eldritch Blast. And I think Hideous Laughter, is that already...
Hideous Laughter. Yeah.
That's
Well,
already
that's
a
it.
magic card, I think.
I think so, yeah. It's -2/-2 to all creatures that share a creature type. One
Hideous
black.
Laughter.
From
I'm
Mirrodin,
looking it up.
I think. My encyclopedic mind, I think.
Yes,
is
it
about
is.
that.
You're right.
Yeah.
Let me see. Hideous Laughter. All creatures get -2/-2 until end of turn, and it's got a Splice onto Arcane for 3 black.
Oh, okay, no,
Three
so
black,
yeah,
black.
it's
Kamigawa
Nizumi
block.
Kamigawa block, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is like an interesting question, right? Because people, the conversation that happened around this is that Power Word Kill is like a really, really strong spell, right? It's like a level 9 kill spell. And some people are saying that, is like 2 mana a miss on that because it's a really powerful spell. And then the devil's advocate on that point, which is maybe the truer point, is that it doesn't require any gesture. It doesn't require any like building materials to cast a spell. It's literally, you all you have to do is say the word kill and it kills something. There's no saving throw. I think it should feel easy. And then, so the question that then came up that I think is kind of interesting is, does it so being low mana value but being a higher rarity, is that showing then that not any old mage can cast it because it's not a common spell, it's an uncommon spell? So is the rarity of a spell more important than say the amount of mana it costs to cast it, to kind of judge on whether it's super powerful, or like, because like the Elder spell was just 2 black, right?
Yeah, well, I think it depends on the wizard that casting it, of like how deep his wallet is, because if you can pick up the collector's edition mythic rare hollow foil version of Power Word Kill, then you're probably going to be more likely to cast it.
I mean, that blew my mind a little bit, and that's really clever. Good job, well done, buddy. I like that. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's really interesting, and again, it's kind of interesting how they've based it. And I guess it also helps that it doesn't kill any of like what they're probably like to have the big iconic cards that you want to be playing, right? And you don't just get killed off for a 2 mana uncommon spell. So it works also within the game mechanic as well. Yeah,
it also gives us an idea as to what legendary creatures we're going to be getting as well in this set.
So the next card is a little bit more cute. It's a little less to expound on, but this is a Portable Hull. For a single white, it's an artifact. When it enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls with mana value 2 or less until Portable Hull leaves the battlefield. Flavor text: they fall for it every time. Which is, yeah, right. I mean, any flavor text that makes you go, I actually love. I can't help it. This is actually like a really strong little effect. The fact it's just 1 mana to kind of like get rid of any like sideboard hate pieces or early aggressive strategies is quite good. The idea in D&D, this is like a cloth item that you lay down. It creates a 10-foot hole inside of it. It's basically like an upgraded version of the Bag of Holding. They have the same idea. Had. Exactly. Well, this is the thing. Flavor wise, you could do like a Vorthos house rule, because it was introduced a little rule of where if you try and put a portable hole inside a Bag of Holding, it creates a black hole that sucks in everything of 10 feet radius around it. And so the idea is that if these, you could house rule it that if you try and discard a portable hole to a Bag of Holding, or try and put a Bag of Holding under a portable hole, it just draws the game.
Or you could just exile all creatures.
Exactly, something like that, right? So it's always like, it's really funny that we've already seen one of these effects already, and obviously they do very different things. The other interesting point is that from a flavor point of view, technically it shouldn't just focus on your opponent's stuff, because it's also used as a place to hide your own stuff, or like, when you run out of space in your Bag of Holding, it's a bigger version of it, right? But I think the reason they say because of it targeting a permanent and opponent controls is otherwise you can do like the infinite Oblivion ring loop of where you have 3 of them, one exiles the other, which brings it back, which exiles the other.
I think with white exile effects, I think they're being very careful, because it was even as like recent as, I say recent, not recent, but even like Innistrad had oh my gosh, Fiend Hunter. Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
which could
exactly.
do the same thing. So it's something they have to be very careful of when it comes to white exile thing. They don't screw it up.
Yeah, it's also interesting that you can put a hole in a hole. So if you're both playing holes, like your opponent holds one of your creatures, and then you hold their hole, and your creature pops back out again.
Well, sure. It's like Portal.
Exactly. It's exactly like Portal, which makes me really happy. Really cute little card. Again, it's really nice that they're taking items directly from the game and lifting them straight into, again, not just taking spells and kind of having analogs, like taking the actual spell name, taking the actual item name, making it into a magic card. Like that's probably the best way to do it, right?
This is a thing for me when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons, and this is again coming through the lens of someone who has like a slightly better than novice but not quite intermediate knowledge of Dungeons and Dragons, and being very sort of magic based. So to any D&D players here who kind of take my read on this as being wrong, then apologies, but that's how I see it. Is that Dungeons and Dragons, because it's all set. Most people play Forgotten Realms, right, rather than Dragonlance or anything else. So if you play Magic the Gathering, you're playing a very sort of set world, and because just like what we were saying about characters and cities and all this kind of thing, they are set places that you can go to. Same deal with items. There are like item lists and things which you can give your character that are known items. Like we'll talk about the Vorpal Blade for example soon. So what I like about D&D is it feels to me like the RPG version of EDH, Elder Dragon Highlander, which obviously Elder Dragon Highlander is the game version of Dungeons and Dragons. Do you know what I mean? Because it's the craziest, most nutty, sort of almost like cartoon high fantasy stuff is the thing which players have latched onto and aren't just like using it in like a stupid way or being like, oh, it's a hole which you can throw around. Like people, Dungeons and Dragons players game these items. They're not just like these throwaway crazy things. They actually function and like people use them in creative ways. And because it's an RPG, that's like a story that you're all building together. Doing silly things with silly items in a way that helps everyone progress and have fun is literally the fucking remit of what Elder Dragon Highlander is, or should be, as a format for Magic the Gathering, is doing stupid shit with powerful cards that make everyone have a good time and have fun. So it's really funny to see that there's a lot of these like portable hole, and there's a piece of key art by Jason Rainville that had Xanathar fighting a bunch of heroes, and all the heroes are using different kinds of magic, and one of them's like throwing a spear, and the other's doing a frost thing, and Xanathar's shooting fucking laser beams out of his many eyes and this kind of thing. And I was just like, this is just a picture of EDH. Someone's just drawn a picture of EDH with all the different players being like, I'm going to give my
so true.
Do you know what I mean? I'm going to give my Pegasus a flaming sword, and then and wearing a pair of boots, and it's going to go fight your dragon that's about to jump into a wormhole. That's just what EDH is, and obviously other formats do the similar thing. But because a lot of 1v1 formats are on tracks as much as the decks are solved, like that kind of expanding
it's more
creativity.
like chess, right?
Yeah, it's much more like chess.
The flavor's more diluted. It doesn't matter as much. Yeah.
Whereas EDH at times does feel like one player is the DM, kind of dictating what everyone else is doing because of their stupid fucking deck. I mean, we were playing last night, and I got 13 lands on turn 3, and it was just me basically going, right, so I'm the big bad, and now you will have to kill me. You know what I mean? Like, and you guys were coming up with different ways to try and do it. So this is all just to say, this is another one of those things where, just like how the visual style is subtly different but still very similar, I think the play style and the kind of flavor cues of a lot of these items and spells are going to feel very at home with Magic, because obviously it's still a high fantasy IP owned by Wizards of the Coast, but it's just going to be on that side of like, no, this is definitely D&D. You wouldn't get this just in any old Magic set, because it's just one shared world, and it's just these silly items that have kind of come to the forefront of players' minds, right? These are the things they want to see.
Yeah, for sure. Now, you think even something like Bag of Holding, it felt like it stuck out a little bit, like it was a deliberate placement. Yes, it's feasible within the world of Magic, but it did feel like it was a little bit alien. Obviously, Bag of Holding kind of rings in people's heads, so maybe it's the same thing with Portable Hole and that kind of thing. Like, if the naming convention needs to kind of stay the same, because that's like your initial thing that then builds the rest of the card down. You're like, yeah, actually that makes all sense. It's the top down flavor kind of feeling. That's how you're going to nail it, right? Start at the top.
This is kind of how I feel Dominaria would have looked like if Dominaria was still just the only plane in Magic, because everything would have just been in it. Dominaria is just the everything fantasy plane.
The everything, exactly. Yeah, for sure. So moving from one iconic item to another, we have a oddly not legendary, now I look at it, but we have the Vorpal Sword. It's used as a single black for an artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has Death Touch. For 5 black. Until end of turn, Vorpal Sword gains whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game. Equip for black. We've seen the standard, the extended, and the promo art for this one. It's going to be the Biobox promo, and in the image we see a person holding a very true to form depiction of the Vorpal Sword. It looks exactly like it does in the for the edition handbook, and it's got the soldier holding a Gorgon's head. The reason for this being that the Vorpal Sword within D&D is an equipment that when you attack a creature that at least has one head and you roll a nat 20 on the attack roll, you cut off one of the creature's heads. The creature dies if it cannot survive without a lost head. The nice thing about this is that a player playing Magic cannot survive without a head. So if the creature hits the player also dies, which I think is fantastic. The idea of cutting off a Gorgon's head is like the best way to get rid of it. Like this again, everything that the sword does in the game of D&D, it does in the game of Magic. It's a very lovely parallel.
It's also nice because the Vorpal sword, or the Vorpal blade, I guess is how it's referred to, is in the Jabberwocky by Lewis Carroll, which is in the Looking Glass. His Vorpal blade went snicker snack.
Well, this is the thing, right? So there's an even better thing about. So just before that, in the exact line is 1-2, 1-2, and through. The Vorpal blade went snitter snack. He left it dead, and with its head, he went galumphing back. Now it costs 1, and the equip cost is 2. 1-2, 1-2, and through. Like, come on, Wizards! I really hope that's deliberate. I think that's why they did like black, because that's the easiest way for them to like justify it being that the 1-2, 1-2, brilliant. Can't claps all round.
Yeah, right.
What else could we see? Is like one of these questions that I raised in my mind as soon as I saw this. I was like, okay, what other iconic equipments or at least items could we likely see? Like Orb of Annihilation, like some Oblivion Stone maybe effects could happen. Staff of the Magi is another one that like does a series of different effects, like it's random effects. So I can imagine something like Staff of Domination, where it has like various different effects, and then maybe they revamp that kind of idea. And then Deck of Many Things is another one. It's like
the deck of many things. Could you imagine? I mean, that would be like a possibility storm kind of thing.
This is what I said. I said epic experiment type effect, right?
Oh wow!
Yeah, like if you need
deck of many things.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I know your deck is like your Magic deck is a deck of many things, but I like the idea of having a deck of many things inside your deck of many things, right?
There's a podcast run by Freddie Wong, who is the brother of Jimmy Wong, which people know from the Command Zone, and it's called Dungeons and Daddies. It's a very good podcast. I implore you to listen to it if you like Dungeons and Dragons and you like.
That sounds dangerously promiscuous.
Their literal tagline for Dungeons and Daddies is "not a BDM podcast."
Really? Oh, yeah, amazing! Yeah. Oh, I love
it. And their episode where they pull from the deck of many things is without a doubt one of the funniest hour-and-a-half podcasts I think I've ever.
Oh, I have to go and listen to them. That sounds great.
I mean, they've been going now for about this like a 2.5 year campaign, so you've got a lot of catching up.
Christ.
Okay. And Jimmy Wong's actually currently on it. If anyone's interested, he's a regular returning character, so that's kind of cool.
This is one of the things that's nice about that, is right, is that we're seeing already that yes, they're going to be very. They're going to be, what's the word I'm looking for when something cares about? It's true to the IP.
Reverent.
Yeah, and it's gonna exactly. It's gonna treat them with courtesy, and I'm excited to see what other items that we're gonna get, because clearly they're being very they're taking a lot of care and attention. And we're not just gonna see it in the items. We are going to see and have seen at least one very iconic character already, and that's the last card that was spoiled, and that's Tiamat. Just Tiamat, no epithet, none necessary. 2 white, blue, black, red, green for a legendary creature, Dragon God, get wrecked, Bolus. A 7/7 flying. When Tiamat enters the battlefield, if you cast it, search your library for up to 5 dragon cards not named Tiamat that each have different names. Reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle.
Which format do you think this was designed for?
Well, exactly right. Clearly Pauper.
Yeah, right.
And then the flavor text: "My children will rule over all."
Bloody hell.
Yeah, so flavor-wise, this is the biggest, baddest thing you can possibly fight in 5th edition currently. Saying that there is a context, it's like a weakened avatar form of her or whatever, but she is essentially like, there are two dragon gods, a good one and a bad one. Bahamut being the good one, Tiamat representing the bad one. She's the dragon goddess that encapsulates all 5 of the chromatic dragon clans, as they were. So each of her heads has a different chromatic dragon breath, hence the 5-color combo. Some people say that her temperament's more like Rakdosi or Jundi, but I think you kind of have, you've got 5 colored heads in a game with 5 colors. Like there's no way you don't. And also, this is another precursor to show there's probably going to be a bunch of legendary dragons, or at least maybe one of each color, right? Probably in the set. That's what I'm thinking. Really cool. 2 different artworks. We've seen the Chris Ran regular artwork, which I really like. It kind of gives me old school Progenesis vibes. And then the other artwork is Tyler Jacobson. It's much more colourful, gorgeous, really nice.
I mean, both of them are utterly fun. I mean, if you can get Chris Ran and Tyler Jacobson to do 2 versions of an artwork, like you're home running, right? It's crazy. And you know an artwork is really good, like objectively speaking, when you go on social media and all other Magic artists are commenting on both of these like posts, going, holy shit. Like Tyler Jacobson, there was like, 50 other artists, like, Magali Villeneuve or whatever, all just like posting up there going, what? So yeah, really, really cool.
Yeah, really good. It's amazing they gave us like the biggest, the best, like so early on, and the fact they're willing to do it. Again, the lack of epithets fantastic. The fact because this is one of these things of, again, where they seem to be paying homage more to those that are invested players, because if someone doesn't know who Tiamat is, they don't get any expounding on her name. Like they don't get anything extra kind of that could maybe give some context to her, right? You have to go and do some research to find out, that she has 10,000 different monikers that people refer to her as. But if you're within the game and you know D&D, like, you don't need anything other than Tiamat. You know who that is.
Yeah,
so like the fact they don't pander almost to those that aren't enfranchised players. It's almost like, look, you need to be an enfranchised player to get everything out of this set. It's not going to dictate whether you can enjoy the set or not, but it'll definitely give you much more enjoyment if you actually know where you're going with this. Doing even like a little bit of research kind of really shows that they have put some proper care and attention into the way they were doing it.
I really want to see Asmodeus on a card. I think
right. I want to see the Mind Flayer. That's my biggest. As someone who's a big fan of Stranger Things, I'm really interested to see how, if they give it a legendary. I think they must do legendary for it, and we've seen it on the packaging of one of the booster packs, so we are going to get one. Again, we've seen Beholder as well, so they are. There's going to be a lot of boxes ticked for a lot of people. It's got me really excited for D&D. Like, I also happened to play a little short campaign a couple of weeks ago. So maybe that's just my personal circumstance. But yeah, it's get me really hyped, really, really hyped for it. Really nice, really good to see. So yeah, excited for the rest of the set.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's going to be very, very cool. All right, let's just talk just very quickly just about Modern Horizons 2, because that also inexplicably got spoiled along with everything else. Modern Horizons seems to be the space where they're going to start printing a lot more legendary creatures from other places, like other planes that we haven't gone back to yet, or whatever else. Like, because as the commander decks become more and more tied to the individual sets, there's less room to have like your Tornos, as Apprentice or whatever else be in those commander decks, because where would you put them? And Commander Legends was obviously a massive set for that, because that's where they put a whole bunch of legendaries, old and new, in there. But we can't have a Commander Legends like every year, or at least if we did, it'd become very saturated.
Oh god, we definitely don't need that.
Don't need it. We'd love it, but we don't need it.
Don't give them ideas.
So the other place that they're going to start putting them, and I think they already showed this with the original Modern Horizons, is Modern Horizons and all of these kinds of like ancillary sets. And I think that's kind of okay. We get one ancillary set a year where they can kind of flex and do whatever else. So Modern Horizons 2 has rolled around, and yeah, there's a few big things, like they're reprinting the fetch lands, or the enemy color fetch lands.
Yeah, the enemy colors. Yeah.
I actually know what the mana like quartet looks like. Quintet, whatever. The little like back of the card. I don't do shapes. I don't do shapes. I obviously know what the magic symbols look like in arranged, but as soon as someone goes, "What's an enemy colored pair or like an allied color?" I go, I don't know.
Yeah, but they've done them so well recently. Like especially Strixhaven, obviously made the colors feel so like they work so well. But this is the thing, like they did it so well, they don't feel like enemy colors. And this is one of the arguments we've spoken about of where maybe this idea of them being enemies. I mean, even Strixhaven, where they're deliberately trying to focus on the enemy aspect of them, it didn't necessarily sell them as enemies, being like, oh, look at these two colors doing a cool new interesting thing. It's like, it's not what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be enemy. But yeah, whatever. That's kind of a bit of an archaic way of looking at them anyway.
For sure. But yeah, they're doing the fetch lands. They're also doing the fetch lands and an old border treatment as well as the regular one.
It's going to be expensive.
They are. So it just seems like, I mean,
I say that as in, like, I think that version's going to be expensive. I think it's going to lower the cost of the regular ones. Obviously, reprinting them is going to lower the cost of them.
So. Jesus
right?
Christ.
Like, we need it. Yeah, we need it.
I mean, we say that. I mean, I actually opened a Scolding Tarn in Modern Masters, whatever Modern Masters the Scolding Tarn was printed in. And at the time, I was like, oh, yeah, that's cool, that's cool. Not really realising the sort of significance of that card. A, as like a game piece, and B, as like a money sink. And obviously, I realised that the more I played Magic, I went, oh, shit, this is like $110 right now, fucking hell. But I sold it, because I had it in a Izzet deck, and I was like, I have not won any games. I haven't had any smooth land drops because of this fucking Scolding Tarn. I don't need it. So I sort of feel like, obviously, for modern players, this is obviously going to be incredibly important, and for any other sort of things. But look, I'm not going to tell anyone how to build their decks in EDH. I know you run fetches because you just have the fetches, right?
Yeah, I opened a bunch of Zendikar, like when the first original Zendikar set, so I had like play sets of all of the original enemy fetches. I was just around at the right time,
all I will say is I have never won or lost a game of Magic because I played a fetch or someone else played a fetch. All of those
Sure.
Lord of Windgrace players or whatever, they got one more activation off of their landfall, and I can't say it helped them. But whatever, that's by the by. So they're doing the fetches. There's a few new cards as well. There's a new artwork by Ryan Yee for Counterspell, which is very evocative of the Zack Stella one, which is the kind of classic Counterspell. Well, not the classic Counterspell, like the more modern, recognized Counterspell artwork. The sort of mage who's kind of bursting with blue energy or whatever.
It reminds me of Neverending's Disc whenever I look at it, because it's got the same kind of circle burst effect.
Yeah, I agree. There's a couple of cool cards that did get spoiled that are like kind of shaking things up. Firstly, we are going to get Dakon Blackblade, the legendary, back, and it looks like his old border one, but I don't know whether that's just because I think what's happened here is that people have seen that he's on the packaging and so like, oh, this is the card that's going to be in the set, because it's absolutely Dakon Blackblade.
It's almost exactly the same. Like the art, his pose is almost identical.
Yeah, if it's not, it's a big misdirect.
Yeah, I'd be highly surprised if they deviated from his ability that much, but I'd also be very surprised if they didn't update his abilities to some degree, right? I feel like they want to make the big splashy card of the set, not just a reprint from Legends. Also, I don't know if Legends counts as part of the reserve list, so I think they might have to print a new card for him.
Oh, fair enough. So yeah, maybe he'll get an old border treatment, maybe he won't. I wouldn't put it past them. The other one is, I mean, there's a few cards. We're not going to talk about all of them because then, we'll get some on Horizons.
Yeah.
But the one that's really interesting is Urza's Saga. Urza's Saga is an enchantment land - Urza's Saga. So it's a saga land, which is kind of a cool space to work in.
Mm-hmm.
3 abilities on the Saga. First ability, Urza's Saga gains tap for a colorless. So it just functions as a colorless land. And it will have that, I guess, for the rest of it being on the battlefield because it gains it. The second one is Urza's Saga gains tap 2 colorless and tap. Create a 0/0 colors construct artifact creature token with this creature against +1 for each artifact you control. So it's the same creature token that Khan's Sign of Urza and Urza, the card, Master Artificer, creates, which is kind of bonkers. It was very crazy in my Bruticlad deck before I took it out. I won a lot of games with that construct token. And the third ability is search your library for an artifact card with mana cost 0 or 1, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. So it's grabbing your mana crypts and your soul rings and whatever else you want to grab. Pretty powerful. There's 2 artworks for it by Titus Lunter. They're both the same artwork, but one of them is in a more of like a sketchy version, like it's like a sketched version of the other artwork on the saga. And there's a whole thread on Twitter. I suggest you go look it up and Titus has been posting up a lot about it this week, about the processes that have gone into it, because it's not his usual style, at least for how he illustrates on Magic cards. And there's a lot of like hidden meaning within the artwork of the saga as well, like a lot of very in-depth like artistic things that are going on, not just Magic stuff as well. So yeah, go check that out. But yeah, so there's some crazy things, just like the first Modern Horizons. They seem to be pushing the boundaries of what is essentially a solved format, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, I like the fact they basically turn a lot of the cards on the head, because there's Brainstone, which is like an artifact that does what Brainstorm does. There's Diamond Lion, which does what Lion's Eye Diamond does, but on a creature. Like, they did this already with Modern Horizons 1, of where they kind of just take preconceived cards and kind of flip them or repurpose them or refunction them, and I like that, because it's kind of the best way to deal with like modern, right? It's not necessarily to give an influx of new abilities, but maybe give them the same abilities in repurposed ways so that they can be functionally more diverse. Like the Brainstorm's a really cool effect. Maybe it's better to have that accessible to all colors, because they can do something and open up play styles for like black or for green or for white or whatever. So I do like it. I wish they'd keep, because they feel so unbelievably different, right? That this is like a mechanics set, right? There will still be flavor. There will still be like Urza Saga obviously has a shitload of flavor in it, but that feels like the interesting things, the mechanical diversity. Like it's a whole new way of looking at a card, a new format of card. Whereas the flavor of D&D is like they're repurposing the flavor of Magic into being a different thing. So it's kind of very funny to think that they're doing the spoilers for both at the same time. So they're very divergent theses almost in like how they're going to design and build the sets up. So yeah, interesting to see that you get both in hand at the same time.
For sure.
Lots to digest, lots to look forward to.
Yeah, I must admit I was a little bit trepidatious about trepidatious.
Trepidatious.
I was a bit trepidatious about recording this episode, only because I just don't necessarily like talking about things as soon as they're spoiled. And I also have this kind of very hipstery thing of being like, well, I don't want to play the Wizards game of being hyped every time they spoil a card, even though
You
obviously
can't tell me
I
what
am.
to do.
Yeah. But actually, yes, it is nice to sort of have a look, especially with the Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, because I just had no idea. I had no idea how they were gonna do it and it not feel strange. Is it gonna be a standard set?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my god, it's so strange.
So this is the reason why we haven't mentioned this at all, but this is why I think creature types was really important for the party mechanic in Zendikar, right? 'Cause it creates cross synergy because they will occupy the same standard space at one point. So I feel like there will be a party mechanic aspect to Dungeons and Dragons. But yeah, it does feel strange that it's not ancillary. But I mean,
but it looks like it's going to work. It does
look like it's going to work. Like it doesn't feel that different. I feel like sets like Eldraine kind of were a nice soften back into like traditional magic tropes or fantasy tropes, sorry, which D&D is the quintessential fantasy trope. So yeah, I feel like it'll work. I feel like it should function, and it will again hopefully create some nice bonds between the two. It's definitely got me more excited to play D&D. I know that much. Damn, that's also another Wizards product. It's almost like they planned it. But yeah, cool.
For sure. All right. Well, guys, let us know what you think of the Adventures in the Forgotten Realms set. I know leading up to this, we've had people on both sides of the aisle saying they absolutely love the idea of a D&D set. Other people think it's absolutely sacrilegious. So let us know what you think, because this will obviously soften people one way or another towards the Beyond the Multiverse products, which I don't think is an accident that they're releasing them in this way. You can find us on Twitter at mtflavouring. My personal Twitter is at AndyManface. Nathan's, yours is
at the Fox in the Moon.
Emails go to mtflavouring@gmail.com. Also, check out our YouTube channel, guys. I don't mention it very much on here because it's just kind of a separate thing, and I prefer the podcast format to the YouTube format. But do check out our YouTube channel as well, where we upload video versions of all of our.
Smash that like button.
Smash the like button. Hit the bell. Do the share. I don't know what the other one is.
It's good for the YouTube algorithm. Comment.
Flick your screen. I don't.
Binge. What do they all say? They say all that stuff, right? Good.
Content. Engage with the content in whatever way you can. Also engage with this content, like share around this podcast if you can. Leave reviews on things like iTunes and Apple Podcasts. They do help. So leave us a little review on there if you can do. Preferably a good one. If it's a bad one, don't leave a review. Just grumble to your friends about it. And yeah, but genuinely, just share our channel around to your friends. Other than that, Nathan, do you have any final thoughts?
As you said earlier, what I love, I've got a new slogan for the podcast: less factual than Wikipedia. I like it.
Less factual than Wikipedia. Yeah. I don't know if I like that, but I think it might stick. All right. Well, other than that, guys, all that remains for me to say is thank you so much for listening. This has been Magic the Flavouring.
We'll see you soon.